Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Stories from Bhopal at the 41st anniversary, a Bhopal Medical Appeal webinar to mark the 41st anniversary of the Bhopal gas disaster. My name is Jared. I'm the BMA's Campaigns and Communications Executive. So I started working at the BMA in the summer of 2019 as a volunteer, and over the past 6 years, my role sort of grown and developed. And at the moment, I have been leading on our awareness and fundraising campaigns. And from next year, I'm going to be participating in the charity's written campaigns as well. Um, I'm, I'm really, I've loved my journey with the charity so far, and I'm really excited to be getting involved, particularly with written communications. Because as many of you will know, the success of the charity has really been based on the success of our written campaigns over the years, particularly our advertising campaigns. And as well as the kind of success of the charity's own written work, there's a long history of incredible literary work on Bhopal. And we're lucky enough today to be joined by two fantastic authors who'll be talking about their respective books on the subject. So first of all, we have Savraj Kaur, a non-profit leader and documentary photographer with a master's degree in humanitarian disasters, focusing on social issues worldwide. She's actually one of our patrons for the charity, and she's here to talk about her book, 40 Children of Bhopal, which is a beautiful collection of stories and photographs of children at our Chingari clinic. Savraj, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you, Jared, for that amazing introduction. And I look forward to telling you more about my journey in a few minutes.
Brilliant. Thank you, Savraj. Today we're also joined by author Tim Walker. He's here to talk about his fantastic novel, in predominantly young people, but I think it's appropriate for all ages. And I really enjoyed reading it this year. It's called The Prisoner of Bhopal. And he's kindly pledged to have agreed to pledge some of the proceeds from each copy to us here at the BMA. And we've been wanting to have an event with him for a really long time, so I'm really thrilled that he can join us today. Tim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm very pleased to meet you all, and I look forward to speaking to you in a little while. See you then.
Brilliant, thanks, Tim. So in terms of the shape of the evening, I'm just going to do a quick introduction here, and then we'll have first Savraj and then Tim are going to talk about their work. And that'll be followed by a quick question and answer session. When we get to the Q&A, you have a little Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You should be able to see there. So if you want to ask a question, you can just click the box and there'll be a little prompt that comes up on the screen and you can type a question in. If you can specify who the question is for, that'll be really helpful, so we know who to direct it at. If you are in need of closed captions at the bottom, there's also an option down there to turn on captions. So you'll have sort of speech to text at the bottom of the screen as well. After the talks and the Q&A, I'll also be giving just a quick kind of roundup on the survivors' activities at the 41st anniversary, and also about the kind of current situation at our two clinics, Chingari and Sampatna. And before I hand over to Savraj, I'd just like to say a really big thank you to everyone just for taking the time to join us this evening, but also to everyone who's supported the charity over this period, particularly the past few weeks. As a lot of you will know, it's been a few years since we have sent our written communication, and we managed to get a letter out to our supporters about 6 weeks ago, and it detailed some of the problems we faced due to the Indian administration choosing to revoke the Sampatna clinic's approval to receive overseas funding. We're obviously really delighted that that's now been restored. We're able to support them again fully, and it's, to be honest, been just really humbling to see the kind of amazing response we've had to that letter over the past couple of weeks. People have been so generous, and it's really moving for us to kind of see that and to be back in communication with people as well. It's been so nice to talk to so many of our supporters on the phone, and yeah, I'm so pleased that you can be here tonight as well. Just thank you all so much for continuing to support us on our work. That said, I'll hand over to Savraj to talk about the book. Savraj. I think you may still be on
Yeah.
mute, Savraj. There
Okay,
you
I
are.
think this should be good. So hopefully you can see my screen as well. I'm just sharing a few slides whilst I talk. Yeah, so my name's Savraj Kaur Chopra, and as Jared mentioned, I studied disasters at university at King's College University in 2010. We spent many weeks on every topic about lots and lots of types of disasters, risks, hazards. Most of them were natural hazards. We talked about everything through to insurance and so on. But the interesting thing was Bhopal, everything got weeks, but Bhopal, it was literally a paragraph, a few lines at the bottom of sort of handout. And I just couldn't get over that. I was like, this is huge. It's the worst industrial disaster in history. Children are still being born affected today. And we're getting a few minutes of it on this intense course where we're studying, you know, things that are happening all over the world. But this really deserves more. And it was optional reading as well. So I just couldn't shake that off. And I remember talking to our lecturers and tutors and saying, what is going on? Yeah, I didn't get much in terms of an answer. But for me, by then it was 30 years of contamination, or 20, 26 years. And I knew that generations were still being born affected. And it was a disaster that didn't end. And it deserved more than being optional or minutes, especially in that context of people coming to study at one of the best universities in the world and learn about what we could do to prevent disasters in the future. So fast forward, and I've recently released my new book, 40 Children of Bhopal. But what really may have also made it stick into my head was two other authors. So one was Indra Sinha. He wrote Animals, People, and it was, to me, it was like an epic, literary epic, and it was told through a survivor's voice. I can remember parts of that book by heart. And the same goes for Dominique Lapierre, more journalistic, but also an epic, and it's just etched into my mind. So maybe it was those two, and maybe it was also that I was a British Indian born here in London, but immersed in a world of social justice. And I was carrying two worlds in me. And Bhopal just felt like it represented something in me that I couldn't ignore. And I refused for it to be reduced to a footnote in my life. So it became one of the main causes that I've supported since. So in 2014, I reached out to the Bhopal Medical Appeal and I said, can I volunteer or work at your 30th anniversary campaign? I've worked in non-profits for so long, and maybe I can help. And it was a small office in Brighton, and they were doing impossibly big things. They didn't really impose solutions, but they elevated local work, which was really important, and they welcomed me. So I arrived at Sambhavana Clinic, and bit of a side note, but it was a year after my own brain tumor operation. And I had been on my own healing journey since, and it included things like whole foods, local produce, food as medicine. So when I showed up at Sambhavana, I was like, this is really how everyone should be living. We all need a herb garden in our local community. So it was watching that traditional healing from the motherland merge with the modern medicine. I thought it was really powerful, and seeing others benefit from this approach for free. And people are in so much more pain than I was. I had access to, medical interventions that I'm very lucky to have had, but it was something I couldn't forget. It was like an oasis in Bhopal. I know lots of people call it an oasis, but I really felt like it was an oasis, and it was a model of care that I really recognized in my bones. And obviously, visiting the Chingari clinic, there were lots of children receiving therapy, learning, playing. It was kind of a rush on the senses, but each child was a reminder that this disaster is still now. It's not older people only or certain generations. It was still continuing, and it's going to continue for some time. And on that trip, I was immersed in the media work. So I was trying to match journalists with stories. So journalists came from around the world. But at the same time, I'd made friends who were writers and activists, and some of them returned year after year. Some of them were new to the to Bhopal, but they all came to tell a story in a new way. Um, Somehow I left. On the day I left, I found out I was on the front page of the Hindustan Times as well. I joined a torch rally, and a newspaper seller ran up to me, said, "I know you, you're the girl on the front page." And I just felt like I was becoming part of something really special, and very, very quickly and very publicly. So yeah, so many people coming through the city, so much creativity in ways we can retell. This is 30 years of telling the story and retelling it and finding new ways to make people see and make people care. I knew that this wasn't something that we would move on from the next year and the year after. And these people who we met weren't just sources of information or like content. They were people that I really cared for, and I wanted to walk alongside, like in that torch rally. So how I came to write a book, it was actually through a friend, Anne Palmer. So Anne Palmer also lives in England, and she reached out to me via the BMA, and she said, "Would you like to write a book with me?" And it was in response to her asking the center manager at the time, "What can we do?" And he replied, "Just tell people about us." And it was, that simple, that planted the seed. We started writing together, and she became unable to continue, sadly. So it fell to me. And during COVID, I kept thinking, what do I want in a book? There's so many ways that obviously I've been following coverage of disasters for years all around the world, and photos, poems, papers, journalistic accounts, but a lot of them focus on like the vulnerability, the victims, the trauma. A lot of them were black and white photos and really stark, and some were bright but shocking, like this one on the screen here. This was a controversial one from 2018, but it faced a lot of backlash because this photographer went out into rural areas of India where there's higher levels of malnutrition, and he placed plastic food in front of kids and asked them to cover their eyes. So there are all sorts of things that are coming out from people trying to retell a story, but and I understood why they were created. Their emotion, the emotion, they pull at the heartstrings, they show this seriousness of the situation, they make you think. But I wanted our book, or the book that I was doing now, to be more of a kind of love of the children of Chingari, and then something that they'd want to be really happy to have in their hands, on their shelves, in their homes. I wanted them to be proud of seeing themselves, not just like a news article or something shocking, but something that shows their sweetness and their childhood and the brightness that they bring to the world as well. So by 2021, I was traveling to Bhopal and trying to capture images, just get to know 40 of the children actually in Chingari Center, and to show that children are still children. They play, they dream, they wear lipstick, they name their goats after Bollywood stars like Shabana pictured here at her house. Just really fun snippets of their lives. And, it wasn't always fun, but it was something that wasn't just like, okay, look at me and feel sorry for me. It's look at me, I have something to share about myself too. In that time, I also had a baby. And my relationship with the book changed, how I wanted to tell the story. It was kind of like cemented itself. The portraits were becoming real. And when I started bringing my 9-month-old, or at the time, these photos are 9-month-old, to Chingari, Nafisa, who was there in the blue outfit, she would look after him, and whilst I photographed and talked to the children. And she took so much care of my own child, and I just saw what the ethos of care is at the Chingari Center. From my own perspective as a mother, So it wasn't just professional, but it was really from the heart. And I really, really enjoyed getting to know her. So here I was, a new mom, photographing, surrounded by other mothers, but all of us had our children being taken care of by the center in some way. Um, yeah, and seeing them also, like, and how their hopes for the children are just the same as any of ours. So we want their appointments to go well, we want their milestones to be hit. We're so excited about them maybe attending a school and doing certain subjects. So we all want the best for our children. So it was really nice for me to meet them mother to mother as well. Um, yeah, and then back in London, I would usually at night between naps and feeds and so on, just write and really want to be back in Bhopal. And yeah, so I mean, and then the book started taking form. So, here we are, there's Arhan, he wants to buy his mother a mobile phone. I said, what do you want in life? And he's like, I really, really want to get my mother a mobile phone. And that hit me hard. I'd done a lot of work in the technological divide in the UK. And, I really felt like this is really special. And then, his Kamini saying, I love my brother. I just felt like everyone was so special and so unique and so sweet. And that this is just really how I want to show the children of the Chingari Center. And they were really happy to see their portraits as well. Some of them received their books. The design process, I in the same way, I wanted to make it fun. So I got my friend to design. I said, let's make it pop with color. Let's make it illustrated, something the children would want to read when they pick it up, something they can see themselves in, not just their struggles. It has got facts and figures in it, but they're kind of delicately placed, or as footnotes themselves, because yeah, I wanted people to receive something beautiful, not just something they'd read about in the news cycle, not just sort of a case study. And maybe something that challenges how disaster stories or accounts are being told. So I'd like to think of it as a little bit of a new model, not just suffering, but a celebration of who they are as people themselves. So yeah, here's a sneak peek of how the book looks inside. Another one here. Yeah, so I wanted it to live in people's homes. It's a hardback. It's limited print, but hardback, something that people I know they're placing on their coffee tables. They're not to be filed away. I created posters and postcards that you can see on the top right there. And it was self-funded, so that's a big question. How did you do this? Self-funding wasn't easy, but thanks to crowdfunding, we covered the costs. And not only were we able to crowdfund, but my husband and I were able to donate to Chingari, and we basically matched fund our crowdfunder. And yeah, so it was kind of a labor of love. I'll be interested to hear Tim's story in a minute as well. But what the whole point is, I wanted to change how people see children. I wanted them to learn about children. I want a new generation to see the children and maybe read about them in more of an Instagram format that they would recognize from their day-to-day as well. Oops. Sorry. So yeah, right now, the Chingari Center has 1,300 children registered, not just attending, but registered. More are waiting. And the center is really a model of care that combines joy, rehabilitation, and a lot of success. And to me, someone living in London or the UK, I feel like it deserves to be recognized. Like the name Great Ormond Street, everyone should know the Chingari Rehabilitation Center. They should just know it and think, oh yeah, that's a really good one. This is what they do. This is who they help. And let's raise lots of funds for them as well. But when I was leaving Bhopal last year, I said to Rashida B, one of the founders, I said, you have been there, you've been asked people questions for 40 years. What do you want? And she said, I'm really tired. I'm really tired. My time is going to come to an end soon. It's been 40 years we've been waiting for change. But I wanted her to know she's done one of the greatest things to come out of this disaster. And now it's our turn to make sure people know that. So yeah, that's my about me. And if you have any questions, please let me know. But my book is available on Amazon, 40childrenofbhopal.com if you want to read more. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Sharing.
Thank you so much, Savraj. It was wonderful. I think, yeah, it's such a beautiful book. And what struck me most there, I think, was, this kind of sentiment about, children are always children. And it's one of the things that's always struck me when I go to Chingari, that, you hear obviously the stories and the difficulties that they faced, but when you get there, they're just kids, aren't they? They're playing cricket, they're having a great time. It's always, it's got such a lovely atmosphere there. It's always so beautiful. And yeah, for anyone who wants to buy a copy of the book, if you do object to Amazon, we do have copies in the office as well. So just drop us an email and we can send one out to you. Wonderful, thank you so much. Before we get to the Q&A, we're gonna do both talks first. So I'll hand over to Tim Walker to talk about the Prisoner of Bhopal, and then we'll move on to the Q&A.
All right, thank you very much, Jared. Good to meet you all. Feel very honoured to be here tonight to talk to you. I'm going to at some point switch over to show some slides as well, and I'm also going to do some short readings from the book as well, just to give you a flavour. But just to introduce myself, my name's Tim, and the book is called The Prisoner of Bhopal, and it's a children's novel, primarily aimed at the 10 to 12 age group, but we've found that older children and adults also enjoy reading it. In fact, it was mooted potentially to be an adult book before a children's book. The main character, just so that you have an idea of what the story's about, the main character is Emil, who has always dreamed of working at the modern space age pesticide plant in Bhopal, where he lives. But instead, on his 10th birthday, he's torn from his family and taken to work from Mr. Kumar and his cruel son Jalesh in their dilapidated printing factory. I have a background in design, and a print works seemed an appropriate setting for my knowledge. And also Bhopal has a history of poetry and so on, so that's how that came about. He's kept in the attic, but in there, hidden in a trunk, he finds a secret First World War journal, and its pages sort of seem to come to life as he turns them, partly potentially perhaps because the attic is suffused with the pungent odours of old printing inks and white spirit and other things permeating the air that makes his head spin and so on. But either way, the journal seems to come to life and reveal his great-grandfather, Sanjif, who it turns out shares a magical gift with Emil. So this is just a short opening passage from the book. It's the prologue, in fact, before even chapter 1, the very first thing you read, and it explains what the nature of the gift is that Emil has and has been passed to him by his great-grandfather. So here goes. Beneath the starlight of an Indian sky, a boy is running. Others follow him as he twists and turns through the city streets and alleyways, one clean breath ahead of the poisonous gas cloud which is pursuing them. Seen from above, the cloud might seem unstoppable, which indeed it is, like a wave breaking over the seashore. But look closer, and there is another story. For just as seawater breaks around every rock and pebble in its path, so every bush, every telegraph pole, every tumble-down shack and temple guides this deathly wind along a course which no one can see. No one except the boy. He alone knows where the clouds will falter, where it will speed up or roll sideways, or spiral skyward in the swirling updraft between opposing buildings. He turns one last time and hurtles towards the advancing cloud. Moments later, as he knew it would, it parts, drawn aside like a pair of sickly yellow curtains to reveal the clear, safe air beyond. But the boy does not reach the other side. At the last moment, he falls, and as the dust around him shudders under 1,000 stampeding feet, the curtains begin to close. So this is the book. I don't know if you can see it there. I've got a few slides from now on that are going to help me to explain how the book came about. If I can just go and see if I can share my screen for you here. This one here. Jared, can you see that screen okay?
Yes, it's just come up now. Yeah,
You've got
perfect.
it?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. So this is the book. Just as a little background of how I came to write it. I started writing books in my 40s. I'm not. That's not my background really, but belatedly, especially after I had children, and had I wanted my voice to be heard, basically, and writing books seemed to be the way that I might be able to achieve that. So I took time out from my job as a graphic designer and wrote a children's trilogy, which, amid all the action and adventure, allowed me to express myself on everything from greed and corruption to discrimination, polarization, climate change, everything that I was frankly angry about. It addressed a long line of issues, but right at the top of that list was corporate malfeasance and what I think of as the sheer evil of knowingly putting profits before people's lives. I can trace that strength of feeling back to 1984. This is how it all started for me, really. When working in a design consultancy in London, I was given some typeset text and a black and white photograph of an Indian farmer and asked to arrange it alongside the Union Carbide logo for the back of a leaflet advertising a pesticide called Temic, which I believe was a similar product or even a sister product to the pesticide manufactured in the Bhopal plant. As I was completing this fairly minor task, news of the disaster came over the radio in the studio, and we were all told to stop work on any Union Carbide projects. And as more emerged about the company's negligence, so my hitherto, have to confess, rather naive, was in my early 20s at the time, rather naive view of the benign, even benevolent nature of corporations started to change. So despite only having this minor connection to the event, to the disaster, and no connections to India at all, that day had an impact on me. And I realized decades later that I wanted to write about it. The process began, if I can just change the slide, there we are, around 2009. And this I have in common with Savraj, with reading midnight in Bhopal, which I felt was an absolutely stunning piece of work, followed by first-hand newspaper accounts of the disaster published at the time, and so on. And as my ideas for the story grew, so did my reading list. Archives, journals, books about World War One and Indian soldiers, and war poetry about clouds and monotype printing machines, Indian life and culture, and Bhopal itself. So this was quite a steep learning curve for me. After reading came drawing. Although the book isn't illustrated, except on the front cover, I always draw characters and key scenes to help me imagine and describe them. Eventually, my wife pointed out that my endless sketching was displacement activity, and that I really needed to start actually writing something. So I began. You might ask yourself, why a children's novel, given the subject matter and so on? Well, the easy answer is that it's just how my stories come out. It's how my written voice seems to gravitate towards younger readers. But there is something else. Like many children's writers, I also hope that my books have some sort of positive effect on formative young minds. I remember when I was 7, I read a book called The Water Babies by Charles Kingsley. I expect many of you know it, in which a character called Mrs. Do As You Want Would Be Done By teaches children to treat others as they would like to be treated themselves. And even at 7, I thought that was an eminently sensible idea, and I've always tried to live by that. So I know for sure from personal experience that books you read as a child can sort of inform the adult you become. So, a drop in the ocean it might be, but my hope is that this book will introduce children to the Bhopal disaster, and that perhaps when they become industry leaders themselves, they'll remember the book and the tragedy at its heart, and make business decisions with greater integrity and foresight than the board of Union Carbide. The storyline itself stems from my interest in parallels and connections, really. It was a feature of my first books, and it inspired me for this book as well. And the parallel of how corporations can sometimes cause the same devastation and suffering as you might find in wartime. There's an example there. World War One artillery fire and illegal logging having almost the same effect on a landscape. The story develops this idea, drawing a parallel between the suffering endured by Indian soldiers under gas attack in World War One and that endured by the residents of Bhopal 70 years later. Learning that there was indeed a Bhopal infantry and that they were present in that very same World War One theatre of war, and learning that injured Indian soldiers were cared for at Brighton Pavilion, the same city which today hosts the Bhopal Medical Appeal. These were just two of the many serendipitous connections that made me feel that there was a following wind behind the writing of that book. It felt kind of like a blessing, really. So in both storylines, being able to predict the ebb and flow of the wind can mean the difference between life and death. And in this following extract, Sanjeev, a veteran of World War I who came under gas attack in the trenches, passes on this special gift to his great grandson Amil in the attic of Mr. Kumar's printing works. "I'm not sure I understand," said Amil. "How can anyone read the wind?" "Not just anyone, Amil. You and me. It's a gift we share. Go to the window and I'll show you." Amil jumped out of the hammock and onto the trunk. He peeled back the plastic sheet covering the skylight and felt the cool air brushing his face and arms. He turned back to his great-grandfather, whose voice rasped quietly from the shadows. "Amil, can you tell me what my next word is going to—" He paused. "Be?" Amil said. "You see, you understand my language. You recognize the pattern of my words and knew exactly what I was going to say next." He taps the side of his head with a spindly forefinger. "You predicted the future. Now, imagine understanding the language of the wind in the same way. Imagine knowing how it will move from one place to the next, bouncing and reflecting off everything that lies in its path. The buildings, the trees, the lampposts, the people. When you understand how the wind moves between them, you'll be able to read its intentions as clearly as you can read the pages of my journal." The old man slumped back against the wall, wheezing. "Can you teach me how to do it?" asked Emil. "I think perhaps that is why I'm here," his great-grandfather replied. "Hold your arms up to the wind and tell me what you can see." "I see thousands of tiny black hairs," Emil replied. "I've so many that my mother used to call me her little bear cub." "Now look closer, Emil, then closer still. See how they move like a field of long grass, bending and swaying in the breeze, or perhaps a bank of seaweed twisting and turning in the ocean current. Feel hairs rippling and swaying as the wind draws ever-changing patterns on your skin. These are its words. The wind is talking to you. Now look out. See how the clouds are forever changing shape as the wind molds them to its will. See how the burning embers of the cooking fires in the slums twist and turn as they rise. How the smoke from them billows this way and that as the wind weaves its way around the streets. There's a connection between what you can see out there and what you can feel against your skin, Emil. When you can join the two together, you'll be able to read the wind and predict its course." There were many challenges in writing this book, which you might find interesting. They included the need to be true to reality, describing the pain and suffering of that night in Bhopal without alienating parents for fear of traumatizing their children. The challenge of making the book exciting and magical enough to captivate the attention of those same young readers, whilst retaining the gravity that the events of that night demand. The challenge of simplifying and explaining the pattern of neglect at the plant and the chemical reactions leading up to the disaster to someone perhaps as young as 9 or 10. Also, and again, I would echo Savraj here, despite the horrors of the devastation caused by the disaster, or even perhaps because of it, I wanted the book to have something beautiful about it. Much as you've created a beautiful herb garden over the land spoiled by Union Carbide, or beautiful smiles on the faces of the children in the clinics, which I can see of Savraj's book, that was important to me too. So at the end, you will find that there was also a love story in the book, it transpires. Probably the biggest challenge, though, actually, was finding a publisher. Apart from their concerns about the commercial viability of a children's novel set around the Bhopal disaster, the prevailing ethos in the publishing world today is that writers should confine themselves to writing about their own lived experiences. The following response was from one publisher when I asked if I could send them the manuscript, and it exemplifies the sentiments prevalent throughout the industry then and also now. This editor felt that stories that are so intricately set in another culture perhaps need a writer who is intimately acquainted with that culture, perhaps has spent half a lifetime there, which clearly I don't qualify. I don't know, maybe in the world of philanthropy, you've also heard echoes of similar or related sentiments. But that was a big challenge, and it was very difficult finding a publisher, primarily because of that. Took several years, in fact. When finally Anderson Press agreed to publish the book, it meant that almost forensic care was taken to ensure that the story was true to the Indian way of life during the times in which the story was set. And over several additional drafts, I worked closely with my editor and her assistant, who really fortuitously had family in Madhya Pradesh, who she was able to call upon when necessary, to add another layer of flavour to the story in terms of the depictions of Indian food, religion, politics, everyday life, and so on. That after 14 drafts in all, the manuscript was then sent to a sensitivity reader, in inverted commas, who checked every aspect of the book from a historical and Indian perspective before submitting a 4-page report, which I was amazed at, a whole report. And I'll give you a few clips from that. Her report suggested one or two minor amendments. For example, she suggested, I was talking about being slow, and I think I used the word slug, and I think the sensitivity reader in Chennai suggested I use tortoise instead of slug. Little things like that, which were very useful, but overall, as the comments on the screen indicate, she gave it her approval and blessing, and has even promoted it on her own Instagram, I believe, and so on. Much to the relief of my publisher, who I do feel was feeling that her credibility and reputation was on the line for buying this book. At the same time, other changes were being made. Originally, I called the book The Last Bo Peep, the Bo Peeps being the nickname of members of the Bhopal infantry. The publishers deemed that too close to Little Bo Peep, the old nursery rhyme, and felt that older children or their parents might consider this book to be too childish in content because of the title. So after some resistance, I kind of agreed on the title you see in front of you, The Prisoner of Bhopal, a more commercial title, but even though it required some adjustments to the text to justify the word prisoner, because strictly speaking, that was not quite the tilt that the story had. The cover was created by an amazing illustrator from Chennai, but as you can see, that also went through a process of change. The slide on the left was an initial rough from the illustrator, but I asked the character to be turned the other way round because I didn't want any danger of the character looking too cute or Disneyfied. Again, really in response to the subject matter of what the story was about. So I asked the illustrator to turn the picture, turn the main character 180 degrees. In terms of commercial success, the book has sold only modestly so far, and didn't receive a single review in the UK mainstream media, which I was actually quite surprised about, not least because it was published in the same year as the 40th anniversary of the disaster. I thought maybe The Guardian or Independent might pick it up, or someone else, but no one at all. And that makes me realise how hard it must be for the appeal to maintain awareness and of the disaster year after year, decade after decade, and continuing to maintain both clinics in the face of that challenge seems to me to be a absolute monumental achievement. I mean, I think it's phenomenal. The book hasn't gone entirely unnoticed in the UK, though. It was one of Love Reading for Kids website's Book of the Year 2024, and was longlisted for the Historical Association's Children's Novel of the Year. So, like most writers, I continue to live in hope of a wider readership. It has been a little more successful in India. You might be interested to know, both in terms of sales and coverage. And my hope is that snippets of publicity, such as this one from the New Delhi Morning Standard, will help raise and maintain us of the disaster in some small way. I'll end with a short passage. I think we just about have enough time, if that's okay. I'll end with a short passage in which Emil, having inherited the gift of being able to read the wind from his great grandfather, wants to find out whether his uncle, who he sees regularly, has also got this inherited gift. So this is the last little bit. Do you like the feel of the wind on your skin, Chatterjee? He asked. Sometimes, his uncle replied, when my skin is hot and the air is cool. Then his eyes seemed to light up. But most of all, I like the music it makes. When I was your age, I would lie awake at night listening to it whistle and howl through the city, turning everything it touched into a musical instrument, from the high-pitched soprano squeak of a swinging shop sign to the percussive rhythmic power of a banging shutter. One by one, the sounds would gather in my head until I could hear them merge into a single piece of music, a magnificent symphony being played just for me. Uncle Ravi smiled. Since I've worked at the plant, I've discovered an entirely new repertoire. When I put my ear to the pipes, I can hear them hum as the wind courses over them, each note decided by the twists and turns and thickness of the pipe, and the strength of the wind as it caresses or howls across the metal. Even the wires in the perimeter fence vibrate in the wind like mile-long sitar strings. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his torch. Then, holding it delicately between his thumb and forefinger, he closed his eyes and with it began slowly to draw invisible figures of 8 in the air. I've not told this to anyone before, not even your father, he said. But sometimes, on the night shift, when the wind blows across the plant, creating melodies in the pipework and harmonies in the fencing, I'll climb to the top of the tallest storage tank and use my torch to conduct the wind as though it were a great orchestra, the orchestra of Vayu. He opened his eyes and returned the torch to his pocket. Why did you ask me about the wind? Do you have a draft coming in through that hole in your shirt? Before Emil could reply, his uncle rose to his feet. It was time for him to go to work. But Emil did not mind, for now he knew that his Uncle Ravi, and almost certainly his father, shared his gift. They were simply not aware of it. One day he would pass Sanjiv's teaching on to them, and in the meantime, the wind connected them as it connected everything. Thank you very much for listening. If you want to get a copy of the book, it's available on Amazon UK, Amazon India, Waterstones in the UK, Crossword bookstores in India, your local bookshop. The publishers are donating a pound for every copy sold, and there is also a very nice audio book version narrated by the actor Sushil Kumar. So thank you for listening, and I'm also open to questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. That was wonderful. It's really nice to hear so much about the kind of the process that went into writing the book, and it's such a beautiful story. I think it, as I said before, I really enjoyed it, and I found it quite moving as well. It tied together lots of different things that I kind of knew about Bhopal and Brighton, and lots of themes that just married so beautifully together. It's a really wonderful read. We'll move on to Q&A. So if anyone wants to ask questions to the two authors, or indeed about charity, please just pop something in the Q&A box at the bottom. I'll kick us off just with a couple of questions to get going, and then we'll start taking them from the chat. So I had a question for you, Savraj. I was curious, 40 Children of Bhopal, so it's a lot of stories and so many beautiful little kind of it gives you such a nice insight into the kind of lives of those individual children in very few words, which I think is really amazing. But I was wondering if there's any one story in particular in the book that kind of impacted you in a kind of unexpected way, or that really stood out to you while writing it.
Yes. So obviously every child was just so wonderful, and the more and more I went through the book, the more I fell in love with their stories. But one that I think it's important to share is a young lady called Disha. Disha's parents lived on the other side of the factory wall, so the outside of factory wall, for many, many years, and they were exposed to both gas and then toxic water from the site. And Disha was born with intellectual disability. Her parents enrolled her at Chingari for, special education, and she was quite sporty, and she'd never touched a basketball, basically. And the journey this girl has gone on, oh my gosh, she was so proud when I stood there. She was just like, I'm in Team India. And I was like, what do you mean you're in Team India? And she said, I went to Germany, I went to Berlin, and I was in the Special Olympics, and she won silver in the end. So I think I had met her when she was about to go, actually. And then I spoke to her afterwards, how did you do? And she said, I won silver. And she's now aiming for Paralympic gold. So, I think when you think of things like Centre for Disabled Children, you think kind of the mind tends to go to what they can't do instead of what they can do. And she's really gone out for what she can do in the Special Olympics or in the Paralympics, and just go for it. And so her and her team, she's just so proud of what she's achieved. And I think that, and obviously, the fact that she came into the centre and her parents were in a situation where they were so confused, they didn't know what to do. And now she's out there traveling the world, winning medals with her basketball team. I was just really, I don't want to use the word inspired, but I was literally inspired by that. So it was really brilliant to meet her. But yeah, there's so many children, but she really sticks out as she was beaming, and she was so at home in the centre, and she'd be in the corridor just like playing her basketball. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. It is such an inspiring story, and I had the pleasure of meeting her as well. Actually, when we went out there, and we went and visited her and her family, and did an interview with her dad actually. But yeah, it's a really wonderful, inspiring story, that one. Thanks, Savraj. Tim, I wanted to ask you about Abiel and this ability to predict the movement of the wind, which is obviously a wonderful theme in the book that kind of ties so many things together. And it reminded me slightly of some of the kind of children's abilities in Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children. And I was kind of wondering what the original inspiration was for that, or kind of where you got the idea from.
Well, I don't know at what point I got that idea, but I was definitely looking for some, not just the link of the bad experience of the battlefield and what happened in Bhopal, but some device common to both that had the potential for some form of magical realism around which I could build a story that would engage children. It needed something, some element like that, and the wind seemed to be the something that you could do that with, because it's a sort of a kind of a magical thing already, isn't it? It's it can ruffle your hair 1 minute, as I say in the book, and drag you into the sky the next. It's an immense thing. It travels around the world, joins everyone together. I just thought it had so much scope, and also, as I said, its ebb and flow can be life-changing. So it was a big thing. Also, I discovered that there was a god of wind, Vayu. And also at some point, my first book, it was a trilogy, it was all about water, a magical water that if you drink it, it makes you feel connected to everything. And at the age of 50, I thought, I'm not going to write that many books. Maybe if I set myself a target of writing water, air, wind, fire, and water themed, I might actually create some sort of body of work. So it fitted in with that as well. But a multitude of reasons, really, I suppose.
Thank you. That's really interesting. I particularly like that idea of kind of books themed on the elements. That's fantastic. I realise we are at 8 o'clock, so I'm going to take a couple of questions from the chat. So we'll keep going for a few minutes if that's all right. If you do need to rush off, then thank you for joining us. But we'll carry on for a few minutes here. So we had Laura ask a question about whether there was any response from Union Carbide or Dow about the publication of the books. From my experience of the corporations, I'd say that was probably unlikely, but I'll hand over to the two of you to.
Nothing at all from my end, no.
Yeah,
Did
the
have
same
coverage elsewhere, but not there.
Yeah, I was very aware that what you say in the book could be picked up by them and implicated for certain things, but I haven't got anything. I've stuck to the facts, like Tim said as well. Like try to stick to the facts and understand there are huge legal cases going on, and I was there to tell a story. I told a story, so haven't heard anything from them yet. Hopefully not.
I wouldn't have thought you would. I mean, I think in our experience, they are reluctant to engage with anything on the topic if they could avoid it. So unless they're dragged into it, they tend not to make any kind of statement. Okay, we have another question here for Savraj. So Hannah's asking whether you'd ever visited Bhopal before you got involved in making the book, and how did you feel the first time you visited when you saw the factory, and also visiting Chingari for the first time?
Sure. I hadn't visited Bhopal. I'd visited many states in India. My family's from the north, from Punjab and Kashmir. I had done my thesis in Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. I'd been to many other places, but also for project, so around social issues, disasters as well. But the first time I went to Bhopal, I was almost like, it was almost like walking into a place where you've read so much about, and you're like, I know this place more than some parts of London. So it felt right for me to be there. And maybe being of Indian origin, it may have been just easy for me to kind of slip in and try and see what as much as I could. How did you feel the first time you visited, when you saw the factory? Yeah. The factory is really, it has an overwhelming presence. It's still there. It's still very much abandoned and visible, and it's looming. It's literally like looming over the community. You can see it from the Chingari Center. So it's really not past tense. It's part of their geography. It's part of their daily life. And I think the second part was, how did I feel walking into Chingari? Is the opposite. So you might expect like heaviness or sadness, but it wasn't really that. It was children laughing, being themselves. The situation is hard, but people were chatting with their mothers, were chatting to each other, having a good gossip whilst their kids were in therapy, and it was alive. I think the factory represents what was done to people in Bhopal, and Chingari is representing what people have done for themselves. So yeah, very opposite.
Like how you put those two things together in that way. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful answer. And yeah, again, so much of what you say resonates with my experience of visiting as well. So, okay, I think that was all of my questions. I realised that I had promised to say a few things about the clinics and the anniversary at the end here, but we're running out of time, so I'll keep it very brief. But I think with Sambavda in particular, I think as our kind of recent letter highlighted, they've obviously been through a very difficult period, particularly in the last couple of years. The loss of their ability to kind of receive overseas funding really impacted them, and they were kind of forced to look for domestic funding in India. And they were successful in that, but they had to operate on a much more limited budget than they had been accustomed to, and that meant some really difficult choices. And it was incredible to see the kind of way in which people pulled together to make that work. So some of the doctors there were working in local hospitals and were volunteering time to come to Sambhavna. In some cases, some of the staff even sacrificed parts of their salary to make sure other staff members could continue to work. It was really amazing to see the kind of love that went into keeping the place open, and making sure that survivors could continue to come through the door, year round. So it's been a really hard time for them, but we're so pleased now that we are able to start sending the money again, and they're getting back on their feet. So it's made such a huge difference, and as I said before, the kind of response that we've had in the past few weeks to that letter has also just meant that we can really start getting that money to them again, and continue to do so. It's a struggle. I think it's been a struggle for a lot of charities the past few years, this kind of landscape to keep up with it. But we are always going to do our best. And Sambhavna, like Chingari, is such a magical place. I think they've also been kind of pioneering some new ecological initiatives there as well. So they've just put in a big gas bag, which they use to create natural gas from food waste. So a lot of the staff actually bring in leftover food from home, and that's used to power the energy at the clinic. And it's like a really nice, kind of cheap, sustainable way of keeping things going, keeping the lights on. So, they're so innovative, as well as, when they're kind of faced with these hardships. So that's been amazing. I think, Chingari, we've obviously said quite a lot about Chingari tonight, and Savraj, obviously, you've talked about some of the children there and things. They've been going strong throughout this period. They continue to do amazing work every year. Children are learning to walk and to speak, and it's always so gratifying to see the things that they achieve. So I think the clinics are doing the same incredible work they've been doing for years, and we just keep strong in keeping them going. As far as the anniversary, I think we kind of saw a lot of the usual. We had the vigils, the candlelit vigils at the clinics. The children at Chingari all got together again with the staff and their parents and lit candles. And they had the traditional march through the city as well with the flaming torches. I think Savraj had a picture earlier of you getting involved with that. 11 years ago, and it's still a yearly tradition. And usually they always get some press attention and coverage in India as well, so that has some impact and helps raise awareness. Starts a dialogue every year. I think I might just end on a quick sort of statement we kind of just put out at the anniversary about kind of where we are with things. So I'll just read this quickly and then we'll finish up. So Tuesday night was obviously the night of the anniversary, and it marked 41 years since the 1984 Union Carbide Bhopal gas disaster, which remains the worst industrial accident in history. The sheer human impact of this entirely preventable gas leak remains almost incomprehensible today. More than 500,000 affected, thousands dead in a single night, and the lives of tens of thousands more altered forever. There should have been the warning the world needed to wake up to the serious dangers posed by a largely unregulated and unaccountable chemical industry, to put in place limits on the reach of the operations and the political influence of giant corporations that wield more power than governments. But this simply did not happen. Over the past 4 decades, we have seen little progress in the arena of corporate responsibility. In many countries, including India, where the disaster took place, and the US, where the company responsible based their operations, things have been going in the wrong direction in recent years. Only now is the global population starting to awake to the perils of air pollution, the poisoning of our rivers and lakes, the dumping of sewage in our seas, and the presence of forever chemicals in our own bodies. We must not forget the lessons of Bhopal. 41 years is too long for the survivors in Bhopal to wait for a real change. It's too long for any of us to wait, and time is running out. I think the good news for us, as demonstrated by people gathering here tonight, is that there is a community of people who are committed to changing this, to righting the injustices of the past, and in doing so, helping to build a better future for us all. And I think, you being here tonight, all of you who've attended it, it does mean so much to us. It's always so gratifying for us to see that there are people who still connect with this after so long, and that they realise the importance of this for, the international community going forward. I think we really do feel it's so important that we continue to spread the word and to make sure that we do see real change in the world. So yeah, thank you all so much for coming, and thank you so much to Tim and to Savraj speaking tonight. It's wonderful to hear about both books.
Thank you very much. Good to meet you all.
Thank you. I'll just add, there's one more comment in the chat. So there's yoga for Bhopal event this weekend on Sunday morning.
Oh, brilliant. Yes, Laura.
Details, yeah.
Fantastic. That will be Laura Potts. Yoga for Bhopal events this weekend. Yeah, please do look out. We post them on our social media and on the website. So Laura's teaching on Sunday morning online. So if you're interested in that, just drop us an email. Send us an email at admin@bhopal.org. Or I don't know if Laura, if you could maybe provide us an email address to contact you directly if you'd like. But yeah, do get in touch with us, and that would be a wonderful event as well.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Jared.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night, everyone. Have a wonderful Christmas.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Savraj. Thank you. See ya.
That